Have you noticed, Beth, how quiet everything has gotten with Kim Davis? I haven't seen or heard hide or hair from Kim Davis uh, at all in 2 or 3 days,
Well,
all week. Other than she went back to work Monday, they are continuing to issue licenses as the judge has ordered, and she is not participating, but she is not doing anything to disrupt that process. And so that's that for now. I guess she has some appeal going, but the status quo of the court order is in effect today. But we haven't heard hide nor hair. It wasn't a big topic of the. Even though Jeb Bush somehow said she needs to be acknowledged somehow. Like what
he
was that?
backtracked. He's a flip flopper.
What was that? I mean, acknowledged for what?
Yeah, I don't know. I don't know. And that, then we heard her like being compared again to civil rights heroes. I'm just so over that. Pataki, they asked the four at the kids' table, the debate before, they asked those four candidates about about their thoughts regarding Kim Davis, and Pataki just flat out said she's not doing her job. She's an elected official. She's required to serve all of her constituents, not just straight people, and I would fire her.
Right.
He was the only one who really came down hard and said that he would fire her.
So we're down to 15 candidates in the race now?
We're down to 15 candidates.
Who else dropped out? I missed one.
That guy from Virginia didn't show.
Oh, okay. So that's so they had a
Gilmore.
Jim Gilmore.
Jim Gilmore.
They had a 4-person kiddie table.
Yes.
Gosh, how embarrassing is that to be stuck at a kiddie table
gosh.
with just 4 kids.
The worst one was but the most he was the worst, but the most entertaining had to have been South Carolina Senator Lindsey Graham. That man, what on earth? So he said, we've got to change things. That used to be that when Reagan was president, he and Speaker of the House,
Tip O'Neill
used to go out drinking. And, that's how they got a lot of business done. And if I become president, that's how we're going to do it again. That's going to be my first order of business, is for everybody to start drinking again. Somehow,
it's for everybody to start getting slizzled. If we all get half drunk, we'll figure out a way to make it work.
I have a lot of confidence that Senator Lindsey Graham can make one hell of a mint julep, don't you?
I bet they're legendary. I bet he
serves them in a silver chalice.
I bet listen,
Yeah.
He would definitely bring
Ice
cordiality back to the White House.
Yeah, he would.
No doubt about it.
They might start having cotillions there.
LBJ style.
Oh, yeah.
Except he doesn't have any beautiful daughters to wed off from the White House like LBJ
Maybe he's got
did.
some nieces or something.
Hopefully, because he's a bachelor.
Well, he was hilarious last night. And then the next time he had the opportunity to yammer on at the mic, he was discussing like jobs and an economic opportunity. And he's like, yeah, my parents, they owned a bar with the pool table, and just kept on and on. And I was thinking to myself, if we were ranking GOP presidential candidates like we rank colleges, like there's the number one college for this, and Lindsey Graham would get the number one college for partying. He's like the GOP party president.
He's the Mac. He's Mac the knife, no doubt about it.
He was hilarious though.
What did you think about the way Jindal, went after Trump and some of the mudslinging that he slung at Trump, especially? I mean, he was really hardcore, just basically saying Trump was an entertainment
some people said that Jindal was the breakaway of those four, and I really have a hard time. I mean, I can't even remember who the fourth person was. But anyway, I do not think it was a breakaway moment for Jindal because he can't seem he's like a bumblebee going from flower to flower to flower. He can't seem to land anywhere for any length of time. He can't deliver a solid message over and over again. He's all over the place. Like you cannot slam Trump in one statement and then turn right around and yammer on about being anti-establishment in the next. I mean, that just does not work. I mean, you can say, I respect the fact that Trump is one of the anti-establishment candidates, but Trump doesn't have any background in policy, and I've run a state before. I do. If there's really, a Washington outsider, it's me. He can say that, but you can't spend the debate slamming Trump and then calling yourself an outsider.
No, you can't.
It's just not a consistent message. He has no message.
He-
There's no consistent message, but there really just isn't any message.
Chris Christie doesn't have a message either that anybody that appeals to anyone. He sounds as absurd and crazy as any of them. And I don't understand why he hasn't dropped out yet. I'm waiting on. Still think Lindsey Graham's going to be the next to drop. But of the names that a year and a half ago were really leading names in the Republican primary process, I think Chris Christie was one of those folks before that bridge scandal. And I think he's going to be one of those type big names that's going to drop out sooner than later. He just doesn't have any traction right now.
No, he doesn't. And he didn't have any traction last night either. I mean, he was trying to insert himself. And also, I'm kind of flabbergasted that they didn't ask him about the Bridgegate scandal. Mm-hmm. That they completely... CNN was sort of a lightweight on these guys, in my opinion. They did ask some tough questions, but those questions had a lot to do with their own interactions with each other over the course of several months, and were really lacking in policy. And anyway, what Christie seemed to be fixated on was calling everybody else petty, but then himself actually came off being the one who looked petty. Whenever Trump and Fiorina was having that exchange about, their backgrounds, that was a question asked by one of the moderators to Fiorina, who, asking her, you have a bad reputation from your days at Hewlett Packard. What do you say to that? And then and Trump specifically has been has criticized you about your days at Hewlett Packard. What do you have to say to that? She answered that question and then essentially, hammered on Trump quite brilliantly, actually, that, who you've had 3 bankruptcies. Who are you talking to? And then Christie jumps in and says, well, I'm not interested. No one, this is petty. No one's interested in your background. I'm like, they just asked them that question.
Well, first of all, everyone should be interested in your background. You're running for president of the United States.
Yeah, he seemed just to be very, he was like, what the American people really want to hear is blah, blah, blah. They're not interested in those guys. And I don't know, he was very lackluster. He had no message. Fiorina was on fire. She, hands down, she's the winner of that debate. And she is the only person in America, aside from the Democrats who are running, who has been able to just smack down Donald Trump. And I would say that maybe she might have even been the best at it. She totally just shut him down.
Well, let me ask you this. And I was talking about this before you came in today, and this is a good time to pick it back up and have this discussion with you. What do you make of the fact that, yes, Carly Fiorina is emerging as a strong contender? She's emerging as a strong voice. She's emerging as a strong voice that women can be proud of and women can embrace. And There's another phenomena in the Republican primary process right now that goes by the name of Ben Carson, who is on the heels, literally, not only in the early voting states, but also nationally with Donald Trump now, and even pulling ahead in certain areas. And so, my question was, is is a byproduct of Obama's election that even in this continued emphasis or world of white supremacy and racism that we live in, the country as a whole is comfortable with having a black person as president, and that's what makes it possible for a black person willing to use and speak and embrace the radical craziness that is right-wing Republican Tea Party stuff, whether they're black or white, because Allen West was elected to Congress in the same vein, and they love that guy. They still love that guy. And so I don't, if to those folks, if you're willing to be radically stupid like them, they don't care that you're black. That's what I've learned, because how do you explain Ben Carson's emergence? Because he purely is a Tea Party guy. He's a total Tea Party guy.
Absolutely. So, and I'm not sure that his performance last night was kind of weak. So we'll see how that plays out in his numbers in the week ahead.
Right.
Having said that, I think that it's parallel tracks. You know me, I'm not a big silver bullet kind of person.
Yeah.
I'm not. But
Right.
there are two things I think at play here.
Okay.
One is that this is round two of Hillary Clinton, being a huge Democratic contender. She lost against Barack Obama, but she was the person to beat, and everybody thought she was going to win, much like this time.
Right.
Then we elected President Barack Obama, our first black president. And regardless of the hatred that the Tea Party and many Republicans have towards our president, over the course of the last 7 years, or 5.5 years, almost 7 years, people are used to the idea of having a person of color as their president. The world is used to it, and our kids are used to it. Our 20-somethings are used to it, and then as adults, we're used to it. And so I think it only stands to reason that even in Republican circles, particularly your Republican circles that are more moderate, I think that they see this as just a natural progression. It's progress.
But based on how the numbers are coming down right now, and let's say Trump stumbles or loses his appeal and the voters get serious, the Republican response to 2 terms of Barack Obama could be to nominate a ticket of Ben Carson and Carly Fiorina.
I think that that's possible, and that brings me to part two.
So that was my question.
Yeah.
So
here's part two.
The country has evolved to the point where the Republicans would put up a black man and a woman for the presidential race.
So one of my favorite books is by Margaret Atwood, and it's called The Handmaid's Tale.
Oh, I love that book.
It's
too.
a great book.
I love that book.
And so essentially what happens, it's dystopian. The country is, the right-wing religious radicals are at war with people of color, women, like everybody else in the country. And it's the water ends up making women infertile, and so they have to have handmaids to have babies for the elite who are in power. And there is a chapter where all of the women in this particular group go to be brainwashed. Before they actually become handmaids, they are brainwashed. And they're not brainwashed by the men in charge. They're brainwashed by women who have that position of power. And this chapter is very interesting because it talks about how it's much easier to oppress people when people who are like them are the ones who are doing the oppression. And so somehow I think that this gets co-opted. I don't think that it is as evil or as plotted out as the book indicates.
Right.
I think it's more subliminal. But what I do believe is that when you have African Americans and women and people of color espousing the radical ideas of the Tea Party, I think that they use that to say, oh, we're not sexist. Oh, we're not racist. Look, we have this support within our ranks. And it does help them get away with saying things that just as a group of white folks that they really can't say.
That's my point, is that maybe the Tea Party, since they're really driving this whole Republican primary process right now, perhaps they are strategically evolving and they're pivoting to use reverse psychology by saying, hey, we'll drive this process so that we have a colored and a woman as our mouthpieces, but they're still going to be saying our crazy stuff, but we're going to have this utopian vision of unity here, but they're still going to be saying our crazy stuff.
Right.
They're still going to be doing what we need them to do, our agenda, but we're going to present to you now this vision of utopian inclusiveness with this sellout brother and this woman that, you know, is just trying to get
Also
in where she fits
selling us down the
in
river.
right then, right?
Yeah.
That could be a strategy that has been planned and is now being implemented.
Well, it was
seems
certainly
so.
the strategy that was employed by John McCain with Sarah Palin.
That's correct.
I mean, that was the result that
Poorly
he was,
so, but that was
the
the
result.
strategy.
That was the result of reptile decision making, having only 30% of the information before you make a
Right.
decision. I mean, clearly
That's
she was
true.
not vetted properly, or they just didn't care because she looked good and
Right.
was a governor, and they thought it would be easy just to mold her into what they needed her to be.
Mm-hmm.
But she ended up being the maverick of that operation, not John McCain.
Right. Yeah, she's just, I mean, she was Maverick from like the old Western show.
Look,
Maverick.
there are still individuals, you know, on the Republican side who believe in education enough to still do math and forecasting.
Mm-hmm.
And if you do the research, if you look at the demographics, I'm sorry, but these white dudes know that they are, you know, a dying breed, and that the majority of the youth doesn't even really agree with them on a bulk. Even, you know, there are white kids still today, the millennials, there are conservative millennials. This is not to say that there are not. Mm-hmm. But the world has changed significantly, and even among Republicans, support for gay marriage and LGBT rights, I mean, those things are changing. There are still people who are smart enough in the Republican Party to forecast and do demographics and see what the future looks like. And what the future looks like is that white folks are in the minority. And if their party is to survive, they are going to have to progress. There's no way around it. They're going to have to become more inclusive. And inclusive just doesn't mean inviting people to join your side. It means co-opting some of the issues that are important to those folks.
Not unless you are re-implementing a modern day apartheid strategy, which is very similar psychologically. It's the same. White folks are dwindling. Yes, in the future looks like them in the minority, but if the Tea Partiers can succeed, they can continue to have the folks that are being oppressed happily do so, as long as they're accepted by this now minority of folks who embrace them because they are such obedient oppressees. In other words, when you are Ben Carson and you're a black man, you can become embraced and even nominated to be president of the United States by these oppressors because you are purporting their agenda anyway.
So this is my question for you, because obviously I can't and would not assume to be able to speak on behalf of African Americans. Mm-hmm. But, you know, we've seen this before. And in my opinion, Herman Cain, you know, was of that same ilk.
Yes, I
And
agree.
and the congressman from Florida that you just
Alan
mentioned,
West.
Alan West.
I agree.
I just
Those are the guys who would be riding on horseback with a whip and a shotgun
for white horses.
in the fields, in the slave fields. These would be the black folks riding a horse with a whip and a shotgun to keep the slaves in line. Because again,
They're
let's
the
keep in
Aunt
mind
Lydia's of the
let's keep in mind,
Handmaid's
Beth.
Tale.
You look at a plantation. You've got 1,000 slaves. You've got the slave owner and his family. That's maybe, back in those days, 5, 6 kids. So you've got 8 white folks. You've got 4 or 5 white overseers. And then you've got slaves who have been brainwashed to the point of being able to be trusted to also be overseers of this mass of population that could easily use the same garden tools they're hoeing cotton with to just kill all the overseers and walk away, but they never do. And when you ask yourself why, don't they, it's apparent that the brainwashing has turned them all into sheeple to the point where they won't do that. That's how slavery managed to survive without mass insurrection from the very beginning. The numbers were never in the favor of slave masters and slave master employees. The numbers were never in the favor of them if an insurrection had occurred.
Right.
The numbers were never in their favor.
So, but in modern day, how does that translate? Because we're still talking about a relatively few people who are agreeing to carry, the water of the Republican Party.
That's
even
right.
though it's not
Now, listen. How did the Republicans get started? How did they get to be where they are today? And especially in state controlling politics, you start one little school board seat at a time.
Yeah, that's right.
And so these guys have been building, and their strategy appears to me, and I'm no expert, but their strategy appears to me to be one where they first gain traction in communities that normally would shun entirely their message. Like part and parcel, their message would fall on deaf ears in the black community.
Mm-hmm.
Yet, if Ben Carson emerges as the Republican nominee thanks to the Tea Party, the listening for Tea Party ideals will be more possible to infiltrate the black community, because you have old school conservative black folks like my mom who would hear a Ben Carson as an old school conservative black person who thinks like them talking, as opposed to Ben Carson, the Tea Party puppet.
Mm-hmm.
Do you get what I'm saying?
Do.
So
I do.
So that very same message that someone like my mother would be able to see through as a tool of oppression, as opposed to just solid conservative values, because solid conservative values are so easily used as the disguise for a hidden agenda of oppression. You see, they're so closely intertwined. The kind of old-fashioned values that our grandparents had, those values are not innately racist. They're not innately oppressive, but they can be aligned with an oppressive agenda so that they are palatable.
Yeah.
So that agenda is palatable.
I think you're right. But
do you get what I'm saying?
The way I see it,
when you can see that agenda for what it is, with that, it's easier to swallow when it's coming from somebody like Ben Carson, because it's mixed in with those conservative values that you do hold. You get that?
Yeah, I do.
And that's how you grow the ability to turn all of us, people like you and I, into slaves on the plantation, and then the elite who have these buffoons as their mouthpieces.
I'm just going to tell you right now, I was drinking a little Carly Kool-Aid last night. I mean, I was enjoying.
See, they got you.
I know.
See, they got you too.
I won't lie.
That's the Tea Party stuff.
I really thought it was awesome the way she trounced Trump last night. I mean, she's the only person who has been able to knock him down a notch. She knocked him down several notches. She's the only one. The media, they've been giving him a free ride, and she got up there, and I don't agree with any of her policies. I would never vote for her, but I'm not going to lie. I drank some of the Kool-Aid, and she was prepared. She knew a ton about foreign policy. Clearly, she was carving out her niche in foreign policy last night. She did a great job. And as a woman, I was quite proud of her. So I do think that the Republicans are wedged. I think they're wedged between the Tea Party ideology, and I do think that there are other Republicans who would like to see the party progress and be a kinder, gentler party like back in the day. But we'll see who will prevail. Right now, it seems to be the blowhards that are prevailing. So it's time for Champs and Chumps, I think. We're at the
Yep.
end of our.
Yep.
That happened
It's
fast.
about that time. It comes quick. Let me just say, my champ today is Ahmed Muhammad for his brave endurance of oppression and just all kind of isms. And I'm adding to that list President Obama for his leadership to show compassion to that young man and encourage his love of learning, and to Mark Zuckerberg, the CEO of Facebook, for doing the same thing and giving him some special recognition. My chump is anyone culpable for the oppression and discouragement of learning and the love of learning of that young man inside that school system, inside that school, inside that town. All of y'all can suck it. You're my chumps. Go, Beth. Who are you with?
My champ today is Pope Francis, and he's been vocal about climate change. He's been vocal about oligarchy and corporate greed, and now he is vocal about telling churches that if you're not giving to the needy, we shouldn't be giving IRS 501c3 nonprofit status to the greedy.
Amen and amen again.
Yeah.
Folks, we've had a great time with you here on Call to Reason this lovely Thursday in Atlanta, Georgia. We're going to be back soon, and when we do, you can guarantee we'll have a bottle full of red pills, full of reality for you guys to gobble up and get in touch with what's really going on out here. We are America's reality talk radio. We are Called to Reason, and you are on 87.9 FM The Globe.